Hello, and welcome to the Goddess Way interview series, where we're learning how to tap into our feminine powers to create a life of wealth, beauty, and pleasure. And today, it's my great pleasure to be with Andrea Flaumer. She's the author of Shopping for the Real You, based on personal style counselor's system of color and style analysis that has provided guidance to thousands of people. She's also produces and hosts the online video series Vital, Vivacious, and Visible After 50. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Mittal.
Awesome. So before we really jump in, I'm going to say a prayer and ground the energy for us. So here we go. Infinite Spirit, please flood this space with safety, compassion, with light, with an opening for a shift in consciousness to allow ourselves to be who we really are and be fully self-expressed on the outside as well as the inside. May we feel radiant, joyful, abundant, and blessed. This or something even better for the highest good of all concerned. Okay. So, Andrea, you have had quite the interesting life. And can you tell us what your transition was like from teaching meditation to writing about fashion?
Well, it was kind of an interesting one. I taught transcendental meditation for more than 42 years.
Wow.
And in my 50s, some friends of mine were, they quit their high-tech jobs to open up a little brick and mortar store about for dogs, dog
Oh,
accoutrement. And I was so enthusiastic about them doing that because it was so courageous, it was so brave, and I wanted to encourage them. So I said, look, I've done a little bit of writing throughout my life. I always loved to write, but never professionally. I said, let me see if I can get you some publicity. So I wrote to our local newspaper, and I said, it was a little publicity piece about them and what they had done.
yeah.
And to my great surprise, they accepted it and they published it.
Ooh.
And then they got back to me about a year later and they said, how would you like to write an article for us about fashion, specifically about lingerie?
Oh.
And I thought,
Well,
well,
that's fun.
okay, if a door opens, take it. And the funny thing was that when it got published, some of my meditation students and friends said, I thought you were a spiritual person. You're writing about
Oh, yeah.
lingerie. So my comment was, well, even spiritual people need to wear underwear.
Right.
But on a more serious note, the reality is that what I've always tried to look for in all the work that I've done is, and I mentioned this to you earlier, is the common thread that unites all the disciplines and every part of our life. And I think that with a lot of people who are looking for meaning in their life and searching just in the way that all goddesses do for
Mhm.
what is important, sometimes the externals get thrown out because we think, oh, they're superficial. It doesn't matter. There are more important things in life. There's life and death. There's more, this is the way the world is right now.
So
It's
true,
crazy.
yes.
And I want to disabuse people of that notion.
Mm.
Um, it's particularly important as you age, but it's important, I think, for everyone because what you present to the world, how you present yourself to the world, is a reflection of what goes on the inside. My meditation teacher, Maharishi, used to talk about 200% of life, 100% of the absolute inner fullness, and 100% of the outward. And he said that
Mhm.
a lot of the problem with spirituality and what people think of as spirituality is that they think you can only have one or the other.
Mhm.
And my feeling is so strongly that an integrated human being is going to express it on all levels. The inner, of course, and I personally think that's where you need to start. But
Mhm.
then you reflect it on the outside, and it's a gift not only to yourself, that's the first thing, that when you show up in the best version of yourself that you can, and I'll talk more about that
Mhm.
But it's a gift to yourself first, but then it's a gift to life. It's a gift to the universe. You're making a statement of an affirmation. I'm alive, and this is who I am, and this is the most authentic version of myself, and I'm going to show up in the best, most authentic version of myself. So the transition from meditation to fashion was a rather seamless one for me. So, and that's the
Amazing.
story.
I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I feel so good after hearing, that it's an affirmation. I'm alive. Like
That's
that's
right.
really powerful. And so do you see a connection between fashion and spirituality? Like,
I
um,
do. I do in some fundamental way in that, well, I don't know. If you look at fashion today, I would not say so. I think there's a lot of insanity going on in fashion these days. There's no thread. But the deep connection that I see is that we are an expression of nature. And in
Mhm.
fact, the specific area that I write about and that I write about in my book, shopping for the real you, that real you part of it is essential, because as a part of nature we reflect nature in our coloring and in our bone structure, the angles, the shapes, everything that we see in the natural world. We are a part of the natural world, so we
Mhm.
reflect that.
Right.
And when you understand the fundamentals of the structure of what creates a style
Mhm.
in relating to the natural world, and what your essential colors are, then you bring more of yourself into the outward area. And so that's what I feel is the fundamental connection. Um, there are, and I'll talk more about this too later if you'd like. It's part of what I'll be giving away at the end of this session.
Yeah.
But there are four fundamental color harmonies, as we call them.
Ooh.
And the most important part of it, and this is what personal style counselors is the format that I use. They're a system that's been around for more than 50 years, based on science, not based on subjective analysis. And it has to do with the fact that there are very, very few people in the world who fit into one of these four archetypes of color.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us cross over, and that's what makes us interesting.
Right.
And even two people that have similar crossovers will have subtle differences. And when you understand those subtle differences and you express them in what you wear, then there's something kind of magic that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
It not only happens for you, and it's very empowering personally, but it also makes other people trust you because they see that there's authenticity there.
It
And
feels like a congruence between your
exactly,
inner and your outer.
that's the word that I love to use, congruence. So that's as far as the color is. And then as far as styling is concerned, it has to do with, we have 7 fundamental archetypes. Again, these are analyzed for decades by
Mm-hmm.
some very experienced people that did this as an academic study. And there are, I personally don't know anybody who's one archetype.
Right.
We all cross over style archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the interesting thing about this, and I think you'll appreciate it because I know that you're an acupuncturist,
Yes. Mm.
is that both our coloring and our style run a gamut from yang to yin.
I love that.
And so understanding how much yang you have and how much yin you have gives you some clues as to what will look good on you and what is the
Mm-hmm.
most expression of you. I have not a lot of yin. I have some,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I'm more, I use my hands a lot and I express a lot. So when you understand that, maybe the goddess, I do mudras.
Yeah.
Um, when you understand that element too, it helps bring into focus more understanding of who you are so that you can express that.
I love that. It's like inward outward journey. Like the more you understand who you are, you can express it, and the more you express it, you understand who you are. And it was so interesting. I My mom came to visit me, and we were shopping, and somehow like cool colors just don't look as good in me, well, in my perception. And I was expressing that to my mom. She's like, well, you're so fiery, like of course, like that just makes sense. I was like, okay, like this is all coming together, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you have you're a crossover, what we call striking contrast, which means you can wear those beautiful reds like what you're wearing,
Yeah.
and you have some lively bright, which is spring, and which means you can wear lightened versions of those, and a little bit of earthy rich, which is fall, which is warm. So when you understand the combinations, that would work. But the summer cooler colors, not for you.
No. Yeah. Thank you for that analysis. I feel very empowered. I can
Yeah.
like really work with that. Awesome. And so you talked about like being your real version of yourself. Like what's the difference between being a
Mm.
fictionalized version of yourself and an idealized version of yourself?
That's a good one. I like talking about that too. And I
Yeah.
especially like talking about it to women who are looking for relationships,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times we look at magazines, we look at Instagram feeds, we look at celebrities, and we think, well, who do I look like? And what are they wearing? And can I do that? And it's natural for younger women and boys too, girls and boys in their
Mm-hmm.
teens, to experiment, to try on different persona, to try to find out who they are. And then over time, it starts to get clarified. And when we're presenting ourselves to another person or to the world in general, if we create an image or a persona that is modeled or fashioned very closely on somebody else, then that's a fictionalized version of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they may be close to us, and it may actually work, but frequently, especially women, go out of their way to try to create something that they think is going to be what the other person will find attractive.
Mm-hmm.
If that other person is attracted to you, then you're going to spend the rest of your life recreating that fictionalized version of yourself.
Right.
The alternative is to create, I know some people don't like this word, but I'm going to say it, an idealized version of yourself. And
Okay.
that just means that you have an ideal. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. Nobody's
Mhm.
perfect, but it means that you're aspiring, and that mm, you're putting some effort into making yourself the best version of who you are. Because when you do that, again, you're sending a signal to life that, okay, thank you for what I have. I'm going to make the best version of that to
Mhm.
express. So that's what I think of the difference between um, fictionalized and idealized. Just it's good to have goals and ideals, and just even striving for them makes us engage in life in a healthy way.
Yeah. And if someone is kind of in the fictionalized camp and that's their go-to, their default, like how can we even start to shift out of that place towards the
Mm.
idealized one?
I think the kind of work that you're doing is where to start, because it has
Mhm.
to start on the inside. Um, the reason that people change um, is because they're feeling uncomfortable in some way,
Mhm.
and I think that when it starts to be too much trouble and too much effort to create that version, then people start to look for answers. And usually it starts with some discomfort on the inside, um, a lot of self judgment, a lot of feeling like, um, people, I think people basically on a gut level know what's real and what's not.
Right.
And if they're starting to feel I'm not good enough, or and this is true of women my age, oh, I'm getting older, and so I mean, personally, I just stopped coloring my hair when I turned 70 last week
Wow.
because I got tired of it.
Yeah. And happy
And
belated
so if you feel
birthday.
like if
Yeah.
you're feeling like it's too much effort to do something, and that it makes you feel uncomfortable, or it's too expensive, or it's just
Mhm.
time consuming, those are the things that make you shift on the inside. But I think it has to come from the inside. I don't think that you can externally make people change. I know that when I work with people, when I go to their homes and look through their closets, if they've had their colors analyzed by my mentor or one of the people within personal style counselors who's qualified to do this,
Mhm.
um, it takes some work sometimes to
Mhm.
get them to make that shift into the colors and the styles that work for them, because they've been living with that for a long time.
Mhm.
And another problem is that if they have a partner who sees them a particular way and
Mhm.
wants to see them a particular way, it can be difficult to shift. Or
Right.
if they feel they're not worthy enough to show up, or they're afraid to show up, that has to change. And so I'm very gentle with the people that I talk with. I try to show the things that do work for them, that they've already made the choices about.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and then I suggest, what do you think about this? And then I'll give them an opportunity to do that. But I think really, fundamentally, it has to start with connecting with your soul, with your inner self,
Mhm.
in whatever way you do that, through meditation, through whatever spiritual guidance you have. You start there, and then you build on that. That builds your inner strength. That builds your sense of self, your sense of worth,
Mhm.
your connection to your soul, and that gives you the courage to make the change. So
Yeah.
that's the way I would say it works.
Absolutely. And you touched upon how you work with women who are in the 50 plus age range. And can you tell us more about your experiences and how they can still feel like a goddess, in the later years in life?
Many stories,
Yeah.
some that are quite remarkable. When I did my video summit, Vital, Vivacious, and Visible After 50,
Uh-huh.
um, I interviewed a lot of women in this age group. One of them is aged, I guess she's 82 now.
Wow.
And in her youth, she was a Playboy bunny,
Oh.
not a centerfold, a
Yeah.
bunny. And She she had a long, very happy marriage. Her husband was much older than she was, and he died.
Mm.
And it was a very difficult time for her. But she put herself back out there, and she started dating. Uh, she's now living with a man who's 7 years younger than she is,
All
who
right.
adores her.
Oh.
And she's now appearing in magazines and on fashion sites, and she's just a real role model. Her name is Dory Jacobson, and her website is Senior Style Bible. There's another woman, Denise Lampron, African American woman who was in high tech for many years, still works partly like that. And then when she reached her 50s and 60s, she started doing embracing the goddess.
Mm.
Actually, she has a site called The Graying Goddess, where she works with older people
Oh.
to bring that out in them. And she herself just started dating again a man. She said, I never in a million, he was a neighbor, never in a million years would she had considered him, but he pursued her, and they've been going strong for over a year. And then I talk with other women just about how to how to get their juice back.
Yeah.
One way is through travel.
Mm.
A very important way is through just connecting, really staying connected
Mhm.
with other people. And in my personal belief, multi generations. You can't, there's something so valuable to be gained from people from every generation.
Mhm.
So that's a way that you do that. And when you show up with enthusiasm, you're you're offering to younger generations an object lesson in maintaining the goddess energy as you move through your decades.
Mm-hmm.
And we owe that. You know, I've spoken with a lot of younger women, and they're terrified about the idea of getting older. And
Right.
that's just, it's not necessary and it's not true. There are so many beautiful advantages to getting older. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like to dress up, but I don't care anymore when
Yeah.
people
The freedom. Yeah.
so that's some of the things that I could tell you about goddess life as you get older.
Amazing. Yeah. And I actually pulled a goddess card for you, and who came through was Maeve, and it says cycles and rhythms. Honor the cycles of your body, energy levels, and emotions. And she's doing this cool dance over here. Um, so, what does that bring up for you?
So much.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, one of the most important thing I'm talking to myself right now and telling you this.
Uh-huh. Don't we all need to hear what we
We all need to hear
say?
this.
Yes.
The most important thing that I've need, and when I taught meditation, I found this was absolutely true, that my meditations were deepest and my students were deepest when they got some rest. You
Mm,
know, we, especially in the Western culture, we don't give enough value to silence. We give
mhm.
a lot of value to activity and productivity and producing things and selling things, and we don't put enough emphasis on silence and
Right.
quietude and restfulness. And it's that place of restfulness from which everything else springs. So that goddess card was absolutely right for me, because I may look very calm right now, but I've been burning the candle the past week.
Yeah, it
And it's
happens.
only because I've meditated for 45 years that I can do it without collapsing.
Right. Yeah, and this quality that you're speaking about is very yin. It's very nurturing and quiet, and that is a fundamental part of goddess energy. I mean, there's a dynamic piece, but there is like the
That's right.
the resting and the holding and the receiving end of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So my yin comes through, it's been cultured, you know, over the decades. It may not be in my facial structure or my coloring as much, but you can still have a personality and an inner life that has the power of yin, which
Hmm.
is quietude. You know all this, so you know this better than I do.
No, good. Yeah, but I love hearing, your experience of it.
I want to add one more thing, because that card, that Maeve card, spoke
Yeah.
to me on many levels. Before I taught you mentioned all the things I've done. Before I taught meditation, I was a dancer and
Ooh,
taught
I know I
dance.
liked you.
And I strongly, strongly encourage everybody to dance somehow,
Yes.
because it integrates the mind and the body. It's very good for the organs and for the skin, for the life, and it's we live in a dance of life. So why not dance? And for, especially as you get older, part of being a goddess is being physically active, and I think dancing is a wonderful thing. All different kinds. You know, I have one friend who's doing cowboy line dancing,
Oh, that's fun.
and another one who's doing social, various kinds of social dancing. So I think it's a good thing. That Maeve card that you picked for me, it was the perfect one. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And you just spoke right to my heart, because dancing is like my favorite thing in life. Like I feel like I'm always dancing through life and in life. So yeah. So
Yeah, my husband says I don't walk from one room to the next. I'm usually tapping or shuffling my feet.
yeah. I love that. Awesome. And then there was one more question I wanted to ask you. So, how does what we wear contribute to our being seen and being strong? And what are some ways we can be seen for who we are?
Well, I think that when you're uh, well, I'll bring it up in a minute when I talk about the gift I'm giving.
Hmm.
When you're dressing, when you dress up, there are actually there's scientific advantages to this. I was just researching it this morning.
Yeah.
There are certain chemicals that get released, those happy hormones that get released when if you pass a mirror and you catch sight of yourself and you don't look great, you don't feel good.
Hmm.
But if you just look at yourself and you've taken a little bit of extra effort to, you know, make yourself look as good as you can that day, it shows up on your face. And when you catch sight of yourself in the mirror, you think, oh, I don't feel, I must not be that bad because I look pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, it's a feedback mechanism.
Yeah.
So it does that for you personally, but it also has a very powerful effect on other people, because what you're doing is you're in essence giving them permission to show up the best version of themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not creating this monolith of what perfection is. You're creating individual little pieces of what is beautiful and what
Hmm.
is uh, so in that way
Oh,
that you're making yourself feel better, you're connecting with yourself, and that is what is empowering. That's where your strength comes from, when the inner, just this is full circle from what we started with in this conversation. When the
right.
inner and the outer connects, that's the connection point, and that's where your strength comes from, and then the goddess can come through that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I know that our guests are going to want to keep in touch with you, and you're so generously offered a free gift. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
I call it the energetic impact of the colors we wear, because
Ooh.
every color that we wear has a particular uh, vibration or effect. That red that you're wearing, red vibrates highest on the spectrometer, so it has a very powerful effect. It's
Hmm.
perfect for the goddess.
Yeah.
It's,
Ooh.
and I talk about the different shades of these colors
Hmm.
and who they work for. But I first talk about what the psychological and the energetic effect of them is. So when they go to my website and sign up for that, they will get that free PDF, energetic impact of the colors that we wear.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrea, for an amazing interview and for all your insights. And I know I learned a lot, and I can't wait to, know more about these colors that I'm drawn to and what works for me. So
Wonderful.
awesome. Well, so for everyone, tune in next time. And thank you, Andrea.
You're very welcome.
Okay, bye.